Welcome to the Finance Marketing Podcast, a show that empowers finance professionals to market their businesses in ways that feel good and actually achieve results. I'm your host, Hillary. I've been working with folks in financial services to develop marketing strategies that work and create results-oriented marketing content since 2020. And I've learned a lot about what works in finance marketing, what doesn't work, and where financial services pros get stuck. Join us each Friday as we explore real, effective ways to market your finance business and connect with folks who truly embody your ideal clients. Hey advisors, Hillary here with you today with another solo episode for you. And I am really excited about today's topic because it's something that I have thinking about quite a lot lately. Actually, I've been thinking about it for quite a while now, but something happened pretty recently in my own business in the last few months that has really kind of crystallized how I feel about this topic, which is case studies, or as I like to call them, client stories. So, over the past few months, I invited several of my clients onto the podcast to share how their businesses have grown since they started working with me. I had Jeremy from Five Pine Wealth Management come on and talk about he and his co-founders started their IRA in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. They knew literally nobody at the time. They started with zero clients, zero revenue. And in just 8 years, they have now scaled to nearly 200 million in A. So I had them on. I'll link to all of these episodes in the show notes. I also had my client, Kristen, who is a financial coach. She's actually one of my oldest clients, come on and share how she has built her business almost entirely through content marketing and SEO. The vast majority of her clients find her through Google without any paid advertising. And I had Jordan and Ariel come on to talk about how we built out their entire prospect communication process and how their close rate more than doubled after implementing it. So I have all of these case studies. I actually just recorded this morning another one that'll be coming out in the next few weeks or so with a client that we did a rebrand and a new website for. Anyways, I have all of these case studies that I've kind of been building with my clients. And I also did a lot of work with 3 different firms last year to build case studies out for them as well. And just seeing kind of the impacts of case studies on both my business and for the businesses of different RIA firms has been really, really cool. Now, I will be honest with you. From my standpoint, I was a little bit nervous about asking my clients to come on, not only to do like an interview with me, kind of like a testimonial style interview, but to do a recorded one that they knew I was going to publish out there. It felt a little bit vulnerable to put both my work and themselves out there like that. And even to ask them if they would be okay, being a case study for me. But I did it anyway. I knew the power of it. And I'm really glad that I did because the response that I've gotten has been extremely positive. I've had people reaching out to me saying how much they loved those episodes. They loved hearing from other advisors or other coaches just like them who were getting results from their marketing. They loved seeing what it was actually like to work with a marketing agency like my agency, Moneta. And they got to see some really exciting results that people like them are having. And so multiple people have told me that these episodes so far are some of their favorite episodes that they've listened to. And what I think is so cool about this kind of content is that, yes, I could have recorded episodes about the marketing strategies in general. I could have recorded episodes or created LinkedIn posts that were more educational breakdowns of the tools or tactics that we used. And I might absolutely still do that. But I think what made them so compelling and what really made people pay attention was because these are real stories about real results. They're from real people talking about real transformations in their businesses. And that is what financial advisors and coaches do with their clients every single day. We all have these really cool stories about how we're helping guide people to reaching their goals. And that is the best marketing content possible. That's the emotional stuff. That's the stuff that actually inspires someone to finally take that step and schedule a discovery call and say, you know what, I want that in my life or in my business too. But this is also the stuff that's kind of hard to put out there. There's some vulnerability with it. It does take some work. You have to do it right. There are actually absolutely wrong ways to do it, but I think it's so important. So that's what I want to talk about today. So, to start, let's take a look at what marketing looks like without client stories. And I bet a lot of you can relate to this. So, if you are an advisor and you have been showing up on LinkedIn or some other social media platform, you're probably doing some combination of these things. You're probably posting some sort of educational content. We all do it. It is an important part of your content mix, but it can't be your only content. So, whether you're breaking down Roth conversions, I feel like that's always an example that I use, or you're explaining what a backdoor Roth is and how much it can save in taxes and all of these things. Maybe you're sharing market commentary or your take on whatever's happening in the economy this week. Recently, I've seen a lot of stuff about the OBBA and Trump accounts and things like that, what the Fed is doing with interest rates. And that stuff is good. It's relevant, it's accurate, it's valuable. People want to hear about it. It's great, but it's not the only thing. So, what else are you doing? Maybe you're also doing some personal branding. Maybe you're sharing a little bit about your life, like a photo from a family vacation. I talked to an advisor the other day who takes his family to Disneyland a couple times a year, and he posts about that, and people love that content. Maybe you're sharing stories about coaching your kid's soccer team, anything that shows that you're a real human being and that you're relatable. People love that. And that kind of content, it builds trust. It makes you memorable. It makes you a real person to the people who are following you. But all of that content, the educational stuff, the personal stuff, it's missing one really critical piece. It's missing the people that you want to work with. It doesn't show people how you actually work with them, and it doesn't show the results that you actually get for them, and it doesn't give the prospect that you want to book that discovery call any way to see themselves in your marketing and think, oh, that person is just like me, and this advisor helped them. Maybe they could help me too. And so, what ends up happening is that even if you're showing up consistently, you feel a little bit invisible, or even if people are engaging with your content, but they're not scheduling calls with you, which is the ultimate goal, right? You feel like you're not getting any traction. You're feeling overlooked. And that's really frustrating, of course. And the most frustrating part of it is your content isn't bad. It's just not necessarily differentiating you. It's the same kind of stuff that hundreds or thousands of other advisors are posting. And so your job has to become, how do I create posts that are totally different from what every other advisor out there is posting about? And of course, the personal stuff does that, yes, but is that enough to consistently get people to book discovery calls with you? Maybe sometimes, but I think that there are more things that you can be doing to turn that faucet on even more. And the best way to do that is with client stories. Client stories fill that gap. The personal branding piece is great. The educational piece is great. The client stories piece has to be part of that mix because it shows how you think when you're sitting across from a client who might be terrified about what the market is doing and how it's going to impact their plan, from a client who's really worried about whether they can retire on time. It shows prospects what it actually looks like to go through your planning process and to have a relationship with you that's years or maybe even decades long. So, I want to give you a few examples of what I'm talking about. I love examples, and these examples are all real. I'm going to change names and details because I don't want to inadvertently share any of the advisors' client information that I worked with last year. But these are all stories from one or more of the 16 case studies that I wrote last year across 3 different advisor firms. So, the first one that comes to mind for me actually isn't a client success story in the traditional sense, but it has stuck with me. It's a story I heard from an advisor a few years ago when we were working on a consulting project together. And I asked him about the name of his firm. It was just a simple question, but it was a word that I didn't recognize. And he told me that the name came from a Latin phrase or a Latin word that means to live. And then he told me the story behind it. So he came up with the name of his firm when he went solo, but these particular clients that inspired the name of his firm, to live, which again, it's a Latin word. I'm not going to give it away to protect his privacy, but he was working with clients when he was working for another firm. The story goes like this. He was sitting with a client in a moment of grief. And this was an older man who had spent his entire career saving diligently with his wife, sacrificing trips and vacations in the name of security, always wanting to have as much saved as possible for retirement. Well, when they retired, his wife passed away just a few months later. And so this man shared with this advisor all of the trips they had been planning to take together in their retirement, with just the two of them, with their kids and their grandchildren, planning big family trips to Disneyland that they would now never get to take. And in that moment of grief, especially, the husband who survived his wife didn't even want to take anymore. And that story changed this advisor's entire outlook on the planning process. Before that, he had really subscribed to the Dave Ramsey method of just save every single penny that you can so that you have the most secure future possible. And now, since going solo and starting his own practice, he works with millennial families to help them not make that same mistake. So he helps really use money as a tool to live their lives and not just save for some future version of their lives that may or may not come to pass, and really finding that balance. So when they do reach retirement, they are still secure, but they haven't sacrificed the 30 years that they're raising their families and are in good health and all of that for this future that they might never get. So he told me this story. I had tears come to my eyes. He talked about it on a podcast. I listened to it again. I had tears come to my eyes again. And so that story, it really stuck with me. I know it really stuck with him. And I'm so glad that he started to share it. At the point that he shared it with me, it was really kind of hidden back there and no one else had heard it. And so I talked through with him. That's a really, really powerful story. And I think a lot of people will be really moved by that and really want to work with you because of that philosophy that you have, because of that story. And so I am so glad. I mean, he has it on his website now. He's talked about it in his podcast. He's talked about it a few different times. So it's not behind the scenes anymore. And now it's working for him. So not the traditional, this is a client success story, this is how I helped a client, but it is just a really good example, I think, of how powerful stories can be and really how they can move somebody to take action. So let me give you a couple more in the more traditional sense. So one of the firms that I worked with last year, they had a client, a man in his early 50s, who got laid off during the 2008 recession. And he was really scared. He didn't know how he'd find another senior level role at his age to replace the income that he had been making. But an interesting thing that he shared with the advisors was that his family had a history of the men passing away before age 60. And so he really didn't want to wait until 65 to start enjoying his life anyways. So these advisors, they're really brilliant advisors. They helped him use a specific IRS provision to access his retirement funds penalty free, and he was able to retire early. So he moved out to the countryside, he bought some land, and now he spent the last 17 years hunting, farming, living exactly the life that he really wanted to. The advisors were really specific in his case study. So his portfolio started at about $675,000 when he retired. And now, because his living expenses are so low, but they still allow him to live this really fulfilling life, it's actually grown to $3 million, even after 17 years of withdrawals. Now, that story was sitting in their CRM. No one had told that story. Nobody else knew that story besides the advisors and, of course, the client. And so that was a problem. I was really excited to help them bring that to life into a really beautiful case study that now is on their website. They can talk about it with clients. They can share it with referral partners. They can turn it into social media posts. They can turn it into emails. They can tell that story now because we figured out what is the best way to tell the story. Now, another firm that I worked with last year, they had a couple that they were working with, two educators, a school administrator and an HR professional. They had saved $1.4 million by their late 60s just through disciplined saving and living below their means. So they're really like the classic millionaires next door story. They had never worked with an advisor before, and they were anxious about making mistakes with money that had taken them their entire careers, half their lifetime to build. And so their advisor helped them nearly double their portfolio to $2.6 million in 7 years. They optimized their tax strategy, and now these clients sleep well at night, knowing that they're on track and they haven't made any costly mistakes. So again, this story, it's such a great story that so many people can relate to. It was just sitting in their client notes. It wasn't on their website, wasn't in their marketing at all. And now it is. So I'll share one more quick example with you. A couple who had been clients of a firm for 28 years. They started with 180,000 in assets, and over time they grew it to 1.8 million. And along the way, these advisors helped them model the financial impact of buying a vacation home in Florida so that they could golf through the winter. I think these clients lived in, I want to say Minnesota, maybe somewhere you don't want to golf in the winter. And they had always dreamed about buying this vacation home in Florida. They loved to vacation there, but they were afraid that it would jeopardize everything that they'd worked so hard for. So their advisor ran the numbers. It showed them their expenses would actually decrease once they eventually sold their primary home, and gave them permission to go for it. And I have heard stories like this from many, many advisors. I think it's something that a lot of you do often with clients, is you kind of model the impact of, okay, what would it look like if we bought this vacation home? And what would the tax implications be if we made this state our primary state instead of our home state? I've heard many of you talk about stuff like that. They're great stories. It's questions that a lot of people nearing retirement have, and those need to be at the forefront. I bet many of you have stories just like this hiding behind the scenes, sitting in your CRMs, in your client notes, maybe even in your memory. And of course, you're probably celebrating these privately with the clients themselves, and then that's it. So your prospects never see them. So I know you might be listening to this and thinking, okay, Hillary, I get it. I probably do have stories like this, but there are reasons that I haven't shared them. And I hear you. I understand. I work with compliance departments all the time. So I just want to walk through some of the most common concerns that I hear from advisors, because they're all valid, but 9 times out of 10, they all have solutions. So number one is, of course, compliance. A lot of advisors worry that compliance won't let them share client stories at all. And I am not here to pretend that that is not a valid concern. It absolutely is. And of course, you need to take it seriously. But in my experience, I think there are a multitude of ways to work within those guidelines. Sometimes, and it really depends on the compliance department. So sometimes simply changing a few details and just swapping out some specifics for other specifics makes compliance happy. Just making sure that stories are anonymized, making sure that you've gotten permission from the clients. Sometimes compliance just wants you to include appropriate disclosures. There's nothing wrong with those disclosures. And sometimes all you have to do is ask, hey, I want to put this story out here. I'm not sharing anything about investment performance or rate of return or anything like that. Are there any disclosures that I can put into this case study that would make you feel comfortable with me posting this? And so one of the best things that you can do is go to your compliance department proactively and just tell them, I want to start incorporating client stories into my marketing. What do I need to do to make that happen? And you might be surprised by how much you're actually allowed to share. The SEC marketing rule in particular, as well as the states that have chosen to align with the SEC marketing rule, it's opened up a lot of doors here that I still see a lot of advisors choosing not to walk through just because they're not sure. So contact your compliance department, find out what you can and can't do, because if there's any way that you can get these client stories out there, I think it's absolutely 100% worth it. Now, the second kind of concern that I have heard, and this one actually surprised me when I first started hearing it, was that some advisors feel like sharing client stories might come across as too salesy, or that it feels kind of like bragging in a way. And I think that this stems from maybe feeling like you're cherry picking a few standout results that aren't really representative of all of the work that they do with every client. Not every client achieves this amazing retirement maybe that they had dreamt about. And I do understand that concern. And also, I think that sharing a real story about how you helped a real person is never bragging. It's just the truth. It's just showing your work, and it's just making something that happened more visible. And when you do it well, I actually feel that it's the opposite of salesy. I think it feels really human. It feels honest. People connect with stories, especially when you write the story in a way that shows what the stakes were, like what this person was afraid of happening, what almost happened, what could have happened if they hadn't implemented the right strategies or they hadn't had the right partner walking them through it. And so it's something that a prospect can really connect with. And so I hope that that's a good mindset reframe if you feel like case studies or client stories and using those in your marketing feels too salesy. And then number 3, And this is a big one too. Advisors worry that their clients are just really private people who wouldn't want to be featured. And this is a very legitimate concern. We ask our clients, and I'm saying we because me as a marketer as well, but advisors ask their clients to share the most vulnerable parts of their lives with them, whether it's money or it's their fears or their worries or things that they're ashamed of related to their finances or their family or whatever it might be. But client stories can be fully anonymized. And I have found that when you go to clients and you ask if you can feature their story and you offer to anonymize or leave out whatever details they want you to leave out or to anonymize, they're usually willing to say yes. They're usually excited to be able to support you in that way. And they're usually excited to be featured. So you can change names, you can change identifying details, you can change occupations if that would make them feel like, oh, no one will guess this is about me. You can even, if you have to, create composite stories that draw from multiple client experiences while still capturing that emotional arc to truly obscure who the actual person was that this is about. So what really matters is that within your story, there are still details and specifics and the emotional truth of the story and not the name attached to it. And so when I look at all of these concerns, I do think that there's something a little bit deeper going on here. I think that a lot of advisors just haven't thought about their client interactions as marketing material. You do this work every single day. You sit across from clients who are scared or excited or uncertain or relieved, and you guide them through some of the biggest financial decisions of their lives. And so you want to honor that and treat that with discernment. And so I just want to hopefully help you reframe that a little bit, that in bringing these to light and sharing these with other people, you're sharing the good news in a sense. And these are just pure, wonderful ways to create connections with other people and be able to find and be able to help other people achieve the goals and the dreams that they want to achieve, just like you've helped your clients do that. So, what I want to leave you with today is that your best marketing, no matter how much time you spend on it, is not going to be another educational post about Roth conversions or another piece of market commentary. Again, those things are important, and I'm not telling you to completely stop doing them, but they're not going to differentiate you, and they're not what's going to make someone choose you from someone else. So your best marketing, it's already happened. It's in the conversations that you're having with clients. It's those moments where a client calls you and says, we booked that trip and we booked first class because you convinced us that we can actually afford this. Or I feel like I can finally retire with confidence and I'm so excited I'm going to retire next year. Or I slept through the night for the first time in months because I know that taxes aren't going to completely sap my retirement income. Those moments are your differentiators. Those are the things that no other advisor can replicate because they haven't lived those with their clients. They've lived different moments with their clients that will differentiate them. And so if nothing else, I want you to start paying attention to those moments this week. When you're on a client call and something clicks for them or they share a result with you or you celebrate something together, just notice it and write it down because that moment is your best marketing. And more often than not, I'd be willing to bet it's hiding behind the scenes right now. So, as I said, I've been thinking about this topic so much lately, and I actually have something in the works that's going to come out over the next couple of weeks that goes far deeper into how to tell these kinds of stories in a way that makes a prospect want to call you. I have seen a lot of case studies from advisors that, I hate to say it, are a little bit boring and don't actually do this great work. So next week, I'll be having an episode about the top mistakes that I see advisors make with their case studies or their client stories. So stay tuned for more on that. I will share more details soon. And as always, if you found this episode helpful, please be sure to subscribe to the Finance Marketing Podcast on your favorite listening app. Leave us a review if you're so inclined. Your support helps more financial professionals find the show. I'm so grateful to you, my listeners, and I will catch you next Friday on the next episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast. If you're eager to market your business in a way that feels good and actually gets results, sign up for the Finance Marketing Podcast newsletter in the show notes so you never miss another episode. If you liked what you heard today, please be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite listening app and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you back here next Friday.